Hello again, everybody. Welcome to Michael's Record Collection, where we talk about great music with the people who make it and the people who love it. I am joined by two members of Imminent Sonic Destruction, a Detroit, Michigan-based progressive metal band, Tony Piccoli and Pete Hopersberger. Guys, thanks for your time.
Thanks
Thanks,
for
man.
having us.
So I've had Tony on the show before. On episode 58, we talked about The Sun Will Always Set, your most recent album prior to the new album, the fourth album, Floodgate, uh, dropped April 25th on FC Records. And congrats, guys! I know this is I think the fastest turnaround you've had between albums.
Yeah, I would say that's correct because it is.
I remember you last time you talked about, oh, I don't want to go 4 years between albums again, and then you went six.
Well, yeah, but we didn't go six this time.
That's right. You're getting there. You're getting that down. First of all, I wanted to ask about Pat because I know he had an accident with a saw, and that's not good for a musician. And he lost part of his right middle finger and cut his index finger. I know he's back to drumming and stuff, but how's he doing?
I mean, he's doing great. It's almost like when we're playing, it's like nothing happened, honestly. Um, and mentally, he handled it like a champion. So yeah,
Yeah. You
I
should really
think.
stop whining about it because it sounds fun.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. We were all pretty floored by that. That was a scary moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it was like, well, shit. Do we got to replace our drummer? It was like, because there was that fleeting thought that you have for a second there, where like, oh my god, he's never going to be able to play again. But
yeah.
obviously, that wasn't even close to the case. He can't do stick twirls the same anymore, though.
Well, and that's important. Now, I mean, and you wouldn't want to replace anybody in this band, but Pat, I mean, my goodness, it's not easy to replace a Pat De Leon.
No,
No,
he's yeah, he's one of a kind. We've been very lucky to play with a drummer that's that good for this whole time. And you know, don't let him know I said that because you know
yeah, we don't need to inflate his ego.
Don't tell him about
we're the
this
ones that
video.
keep him down a little bit. We keep him,
I
otherwise,
will.
I'm
I would add though, should anything happen to anyone in this band, except for Pete, Pat's son Dominic could very easily replace any of us.
Wow, wow.
maybe not very easily.
Well, he could do it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the band. Obviously, Tony, lead vocals and guitar. We just talked about Pat, the drummer, Pete Hoppersberger, keys and vocals, Brian Paxton on bass, and Scott Thompson, guitar and vocals. The new album, produced by Nick Hagan, who also produced the last album. And I think you found like a very consistent sound with this, having the same producer. I think you had a couple of different producers over the first couple of albums. What's it been like working with Nick?
Well, Nick is he's great to work with because for one, he gets what we're trying to do. He's a fan of the kind of music we make. And so just having that in your corner helps tremendously. Like when Pete has this, wild idea for recording vocals, and I'll let him go on about that. You know, Nick's like, all right, cool, let's give it a shot. He doesn't poo-poo it right away. He's open to letting us try to work out our ideas, which is obviously great, and that's why we've worked with him now for two albums in a row.
Yeah, he's a really good musician himself, and he came to us after I don't remember which album it was, but he was like, "Look, give me a shot at producing your next one because I don't think anybody's got your sound the way you want it yet, or the way he wanted, you know." But I think he wanted to hear it the same way we wanted to hear it, so he was like, "Give me a crack at it," and we did. I think the first thing he did was some live recording and just kind of showed us what he could do, and we were like, okay, this guy gets it. He gets what we're going for. We don't have to struggle with that part of recording. So yeah, it really helps. And easy to work with, and he's open to ideas, and he's not shy. He was better this time about not being shy about throwing his own ideas in, because we were like, please, be a producer. Give us some. What do you got? And sometimes, sometimes he'd throw out an idea, and we're like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. But that's part of it. So
Yeah,
but sometimes he had great ideas, and we're like, oh, this is awesome. We've had a lot of good experience with him so far.
great. What's the seed of this album? Did it start with a song, a melody, a single riff?
Um, it was more just kind of like an like a theme, I guess. So, three of the songs that are on this album, I wrote like in 2017, 2018 or so. And I didn't even really intend to give them to the band, if you will. And what happened with those songs, I wrote all three of those songs in a really quick span after a bad breakup, you know? So, like, it sucked. And those songs came real quick. And then the idea kind of came to me as um writing new stuff. Pete's coming up with some new stuff, and the idea came to me that, like, a floodgate of creativity opens after some significant life event, and so that was kind of the idea behind the title of the album, and the theme. I suppose it's not like a concept album in any way, but it's just really a kind of a collection of songs that came quickly out of a flood of creativity. So,
All right, so that answers my next question. Was what was the moment, the singular moment that sort of led to that theme? Um, Great personal loss, breakup, death. Often does lead to a burst of creativity, and in this case, it's not a bad thing if you get an album out of it. At least it's like a what do they call it? Consolation prize.
yeah, yeah, I suppose that's a good way to put it.
So we should have called this album Consolation Prize.
Doesn't quite have the same ring to it, but I think
No, maybe not. Yeah.
I think it works. That could be the name of the tour, the Consolation
Yeah,
Prize tour.
the consolation prize tour.
How long did it take to go from start to finish? Like, when did you just told me about when you started writing? What about the finish of the album? When was everything put to bed?
Well, I think there was a point, Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, where I I had a collection of the demos, like the early collection. This is before like the game, and um this is before no one. Uh it was kind of early, and I said to the guys, here's what we have, and everyone was kind of on board with it. So, that was kind of like the first, I guess, the start of it. I wouldn't say that we started writing this album at the time that I wrote those early demos. I would say, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years ago, I guess it was. Well, we started pretty quickly.
Yeah, this time starts flying. I know you had some early demos the way I'm remembering this, but they were, like you said, they were just kind of off to the side. You weren't bringing them to the guys. And we were working on an idea we're throwing around an idea of like, let's just write together like a whole big concept piece, because we had done that on one of our longer songs on the first album. And we loved how it came out. And but it was kind of like it took so long to do, because we're all, we have day jobs and whatever else. So it's like, when we can't be like, just all right, let's just lock ourselves away, like do like Rush and go live in a studio and write an album for a month or something. But so it was, we were throwing around this idea, and it was like we had some good ideas, but it was already starting to take a while. And after a little bit, it's like the clock starts ticking, and Tony's like, well, I do have some songs already. And then we just kind of shifted gears, and then yeah, and then even with that, we any of these ideas, I think they all take on a different form when everybody starts throwing their ideas in, or just their little personal touches in the way they play, or how we sing, or because a lot of the times it's like there's a real rough idea for like there's harmonies here, and then when the three of our voices come together and do it, it's like, oh, okay, this is what we need.
Now it's an imminent sonic destruction song.
Right, right. So as far as how long it took, yeah, I'd say I don't. It's kind of a rough thing to start with, because it was I didn't mark down the date. We're not real good at.
Well, next time you'll know.
Yeah, yeah. Next time I'll be like, we got to keep track of this. We
Yeah,
got
we got
to
to track
class
that.
us about it. We
Somebody's
want
gonna,
to be able to not sound like morons.
some idiot's gonna ask this question.
Yeah.
All right. So, Tony, was you mentioned these songs were originally kind of thought about for like a Tony solo album? Was it because they were just so personal to you, or did you not think that they were the right at that stage? Were they not ISD style songs?
Both. Well, especially two of them were like really personal, and I just figured, these should just be mine, just because like it stylistically maybe it wasn't really an ISD song, and then just how personal they were. But what it's funny, enough time passed, and I didn't put them out, and the guys were open to them, and what ended up happening is like one of the songs is Fine Center. Like Fine Center at first was like 6.5 minutes, and then of course it gets ISD'd, if you will. Pat wanted to do some cool King's X kind of stuff in the instrumental section, and it became what it is. The other two songs didn't really change a whole lot, except for like what Pete was talking about. We get the other guys singing on it, and we get everyone playing on it, not just me playing all the stuff with programmed drums, and it becomes an ISD song. Actually, at the end of the light at the end of the tunnel, there was a part vocally where I sang it, and I did a great job. I crushed it. But then Pete was like, let me take a crack at it, boys. And he you hear him at the end of the song, and he absolutely crushed it. Me and Nick were both sitting there going, oh yep, that's the one. Same.
Oh, is that on the weight? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh yeah, the wait. See, I don't even know my own songs. Yeah, that's at the
I was
end of
thinking,
the
what did I
wait.
do on light at the end of the tunnel? Oh
No,
no.
no, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I confused the two. I'm sorry, but yeah, it was at the end of the wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just as long as you remember on stage, that's all that matters. Who's supposed to be singing here? I don't.
Yeah.
So last time when I had Tony on, he talked about I always asked the question of what your first favorite record was, and Tony had shared that like when he was young, he loved Nirvana's Nevermind.
Yep.
And Pete, I'm going to ask you the same question because I know this is a band made up of individuals that all kind of come at this ISD project from different backgrounds. What was your first favorite record? The first one that kind of grabbed you when you were young?
Well, I mean, if you want to go back to like playing my parents' records and loving any of those, they had a lot of Beatles and like Simon and Garfunkel and stuff like that. So, I mean, I loved listening to those, but the first time that I had like my own personal, I sought it out and I got it and would listen to. I mean, because with the early stuff, it's like I loved like Abbey Road and the White Album and stuff, just playing those with my parents. But um, as far as my own, I think the first one I really got into was maybe like Men at Work, like the first Men at Work album.
Okay. Yeah.
When I was, maybe 10, something like that. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is really cool. But, getting into a little more formative years after that, I discovered like Van Halen and it's like, okay, well, this is, I did a lot of discovering bands later on and then going backwards and listening to their old stuff and going, wow, this is even better. So by the time I picked up Van Halen, I was like, oh no, they're getting rid of their singer, which was fine because I still liked it, but it was, yeah, I don't know. It's not an easy question, I guess. I just imagine all this stuff and all these different things I listened to that I liked. And like, what was the first one that really, but maybe Men at Work is the first one I remember really being like, these guys are really awesome. I was really into them in like sixth grade or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's an important rite of passage when you get your first album or the first song or first album that you really connect with that's yours. It's not something that was, hey, you can listen to this or your parents have it laying around. Sometimes that stuff is your favorite, but sometimes you need your own thing.
Yeah, yeah. There's sometimes, yeah, it's something that connects with you instead of just it was handed down to you and you can still appreciate it. It's still amazing, but
Like my first thing that was my own was Kiss Alive. My parents did not know what to do with that. That was
oh, really?
so different than anything they were listening to, and that's what made it feel sort of dangerous and
Mhm.
mysterious and rebellious. It was like, yeah, this is not my mom's Barry Manilow.
Yeah, I was always really lucky. Like my parents were very cool about whatever I listened to. They were usually like they could try to understand it. Even like like Iron Maiden and stuff. And my mom would be like, "Oh, well, this is cool," and we'd tell her about some of the stories of the lyrics, and she's like, "Oh, yeah, that's neat." She was, she
Yeah.
didn't. I never had the "What are you doing?" and we had to like secretly hide away and
Oh,
listen.
I definitely did.
Did
I
you?
remember. Oh
I know a
yeah,
lot of people.
I remember a time I was listening to Green Day of all things, and it was on the radio. And my dad, I had a basement bedroom. My dad uh, yells from the top of the stairs, "Turn that shit off!"
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my dad was a little more on the what the hell is that? But mom was a little more like, oh, tell me about it. I want to know what you're doing. And
Yeah.
my dad was a little more like, sounds
Uh,
like killing cats in your room.
yeah, I think that's in a nutshell Midwestern moms versus Midwestern dads right there. My mom sort of got my music by osmosis. I came upstairs. I too had a basement bedroom, and I came upstairs one day, and she's washing the dishes, singing "Shout It Out Loud." Didn't even know it was a Kiss song.
Awesome.
Whereas my dad, I used to unload his truck for money, and he used to, give me money, and then he would indulge me and let me go to the record store in Columbus because we didn't have a record store in town. And I bought the cassette for "Peace of Mind" by Iron Maiden, and I was like, "Hey, can I put this in the cassette player?" He's like, "Okay, we'll give it a shot." And I think he made it through the drum break in "Where Eagles Dare" before hitting the eject button.
All the way there, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Nope.
First
Soon
three
as
seconds of the
as
album.
soon as the guitar kicked in, he was like, "Nope, can't do that."
That's funny.
Well, he tried. I'll give him a give him points for that.
Hey, that's better than a lot.
That's right. So Tony and I were talking versus in direct messages last night. We're talking, and I mentioned how sludgy and heavy the bottom end of this record is. It struck me that this is the ISD sound, at least for Floodgate, and I think I said something to the effect of Pat and Brian are assaulting me, and it's a good thing that I like it because I could have them brought up in charges for this. What were you listening to, or what was sort of influencing your sound for this record?
Uh, well, I feel like we got to give more credit for the sound to Nick. Um, because he just kind of took what we did and he made it the way you're hearing it now. I mean, obviously we're always influenced by whatever we're listening to. And I mean, for me personally, it's kind of always a rotation of the same artist that I've always loved, and then I throw in a new artist. But I mean, as far as the sound and the production goes, um, I wish Nick were here to kind of better answer that. All I know is I love the sound of the Mesa Dual Rectifier, and we recorded with Ross and Nick, Ross Morgan. We recorded at his studio in Grand Rapids, and he had a couple of great microphones, a Royer and an SM57. Put it right on that speaker cab, and they got the sound. It was two. I think it's just a combination of two guys who really know what they're doing. Um, and then as far as that bottom end, that sludgy bottom end, I mean, it's just kind of, I guess it's just kind of who we are.
Mm.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think part of that's just the kind of you're writing and the tuning, goes into that. And
That's true.
you kind of put that together with somebody who knows how to get a sound that, is in their head and talking with us and being able to know what's in Tony's head, what's in my head, what's in all of our, what are we wanting to hear? And, yeah, and just being able to pull it out there. But it's a lot of it's the riffs. I think were a little sludgier on this album for some reason. Maybe I don't, maybe you agree with that, Michael. It's hard for us because we're so close to it and we've been
Yeah,
playing
yeah.
these songs for so long that they feel like totally second nature. But I'm always interested to hear, okay, after we're done with all of this and we've been doing it and living with it and we're almost sick of some of it, give it to somebody and like, okay, what do you really think? And somebody who like you, somebody who knows their stuff and knows what they're listening to and really analyzes it. What do you think about the difference between it between other stuff that we've
Yeah.
done?
Well, I definitely hear the usual influences. I know Tony and I talked last time about you know, Meshuggah and Opeth and Porcupine Tree
Oh,
and Devin Townsend and all of these kind of melding together. But it seemed like it seemed like more, maybe even more grunge like popped into the equation for this album.
mhm.
Yeah, you can blame. I think a couple of there's a couple of the like the light at the end of the tunnel and Fine Center guitar wise are kind of grungy because they're not really riff songs. And then Floodgate's opening riff is, of course, a pretty nasty guitar tone with an octave pedal, and simple, if you will. Uh, so it's probably why you kind of get that grunge vibe is from riffs like those.
I think it's cool that we're not trying to like, you know, and we always are doing whatever we like at the time and whatever sounds good to us. And it's like, well, if we're happy with how it sounds, then you know, that's all that
There,
really matters.
there's a couple things too that shape the sound of this album, and one is Pat. You know, his drums sound great because he really knows what he's doing. But like he didn't, he wants a specific sound out of his drums. And again, Nick is able to make that happen. And then Pete, I'd love for you to tell Mike about the whole vocal recording and
Yeah,
how that came about and why I think these are probably the best vocals we've ever recorded.
yeah. I had been reading. I read the Ted Templeman book. I don't know if you've read that, Michael, but
I haven't read it, but I
it's
I know about
really,
it.
yeah, it's very interesting because it's like, his whole career. And he started out as like he was in some band in the 60s and was kind of a pop star before he got into producing um, bands. And he was talking about how he recorded the Doobie Brothers. This was before he started doing Van Halen and any of that other stuff that he did. But um, he was talking about recording them and the fact that all these guys could sing. And so he wanted to get a really lush harmony sound out of them, which he obviously did. I mean, anybody that knows anything about what the Doobie Brothers sound like. And so he had everybody sing every part instead of like, like with us, it's always been in the past, like, okay, Tony, you're singing this part. I'm going to sing this part. Scott's going to sing the high part usually. Um, and what he did with them was he said, everybody sing every part. And then he would take all those tracks and blend them. And it just gave him this super lush, sound where somebody might come out a little more in one or the other, but there's this real blend of all this stuff. So I was like, what if we tried that? Because Tony and Scott and I can all sing. So we were like, what if we all sing all the parts? Because we can. Maybe some of them are a little more comfortable than others, but so we threw that by Nick, and that's what you were talking about with Nick being kind of open to some crazy ideas because he was like, that's going to be a lot of tracks. Because
It
then he always
was.
wants to double everybody
Hmm.
just to have all this stuff there. So, but I think in the end result, it came out with kind of this is the first time, this is the closest I think we've ever come to hitting what's been in our heads as far as how we want the vocals to come out. Because we always geek out about being floored by other bands when they really have, or like Opeth even. What's that? Eternal Rains May Come, that one song.
Yes.
That we were always like, when that comes in, we're like, oh man, if we could get this, like Steven Wilson can do it. We
Yeah.
can do this. What do we do?
Yeah.
We gave it a shot, and I think it came out pretty cool. I'm happy with a lot of the cool harmonies that we're around here and how they sound.
Yeah, I noticed that I mean, it seemed to me like maybe just a progression through, repeatedly recording that you were getting better at this, but that does explain a lot. And it is an interesting part. So every song, you're all hitting the high melody, you're all hitting the low melody and everything in between. That's all of you.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
only the
any part where there's a chorus, like a big chorus with a lot of
yeah.
harmonies. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, obviously, there's obvious leads that no one, it was just okay. It's definitely this guy singing the lead, but yeah, everyone sang every part, and it was a lot of fun for us to do, and a lot of work for Nick.
but yeah, yeah. To clarify, yeah, like Tony said, if it's the lead part and there's not supposed to be any harmonies, nobody else is singing that.
Yeah.
But that's anytime we have because we like to have big catchy hooks of harmony. We all just really like that, and I think that's kind of what sets us apart with our style. I think that's kind of our unique thing a little bit is that, the heavy stuff, the progressive stuff, instrumental stuff, but we try to have just, big kind of hooky, chorusy melodies that'll stick with you a little bit too, which not a lot of bands that are doing the wank fest do that.
You have such a dense sound. Is it hard sometimes to find the pocket to put those vocal melodies in there?
I don't think so.
I think it's just kind of what we hear and kind of what comes naturally to us.
Mhm.
If we're, everybody's playing, we still find a part where we're like, this is where you want to hear this and you want to hear harmonies. And I think we all just kind of, it's kind of what we gravitate to. So we're not trying too hard to force it in. It's just, that's what is supposed to be there.
I think of like Fine Center as an example of where you have this dense, heavy, super low guitar, but you have this very clear vocal melody with awesome harmonies matching it. And it came pretty naturally, honestly, when it came time to record it. There was no question about it. And actually, we just rehearsed the crap out of it last week, and it just kind of like further cements the fact that like it's natural. This works for that dense, heavy music to still have a catchy, harmony filled chorus.
And I'd say that's a testament to Nick too, as far as how that
Oh,
sounds.
making it work. Yeah.
Yeah, to have that dense sound, because I know that's not an easy thing. Where it's like, here's all of this wall of stuff that's going on, but we still want to be able to hear everything. It's like that's not easy, right? So he does a great job of, and I think there was somebody that I saw that reviewed it recently, reviewed the album and said that there was something about they were, I don't know how they described the harmonies, but they were like, what was it? What was the word he was using? It was something like that they were sparkling or that they were like
I bet you I can find it.
shiny or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Shimmering.
Shimmering, maybe that's what it was, something
I
like
think
that.
I read a few of the reviews. I think that might have been it. I
Yeah,
could
something
be
like that.
at my age, I could be misremembering.
Well, but that's a production thing for sure. But I mean, and then we, hopefully we can pull that off live, which is why we try to have our own sound guy with us at all times so that we can. Because if somebody doesn't know what they're ready for, we're going to sound like we're not going to sound great live if somebody doesn't know how to bring out what they're supposed to hear. So
It's
Yeah.
true.
The what is the band's approach to solos? Do you when you play live, do you put your live so do you take the album solo and play it live, or do you play the solos different every time?
Well, as Frank Zappa put it, there's guys who play solos like he did, and then there's guys who play parts. Uh, I definitely fall into the playing parts category. I don't know. I totally understand what Frank Zappa does, and I love it. Like I love Zappa, and but for me, it's kind of weird to go see. Like if I went to go see Dream Theater and they're playing Under a Glass Moon, and suddenly John Petrucci's in a different mood and he doesn't play that solo that I love so much. To me, that's kind of it would suck. So I play my parts,
yeah,
and for the
no,
most part, we kind of all do.
yeah, I think that's kind of the way the style of music is people that listen to this kind of music listen to solos as little, um, you know, constructed pieces of little compositions in the song. So you want to try to hit those and have them be what, because I mean you're putting them together for a reason, and once you get the one that really fits, you're like, okay, I got to remember this because it really fits, and
Yep.
we're not doing jazz, we're doing prog. So jazz, you can do that. You just stretch out and it's fun. Or blues, it's great. And I've done both of those and I enjoy them. But for this kind of music, I would definitely say you construct your solo and then you do it as faithfully as you can manage, which doesn't always happen, but we do our best. There's
Yeah.
always the human element, right?
Yeah, I
Uh,
understand. I understand both camps and both philosophies, and I I don't know if there's a right answer, but I know as an audience member, I like hearing it the way that it was played on the record, especially if it's certain songs. Like I don't think I could go see like Night Ranger do "Don't Tell Me You Love Me" and have Brad Gillis play a different solo.
Yeah, that wouldn't work.
Yeah, I want that solo. But I think there are other And I also don't mind if if they play the solo from the album and then extend it and add to it, like John Petrucci will sometimes do.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, have an extended jam session. Yeah,
Yeah. No, I love that stuff.
that's cool too.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we can all hang out together because we're all on the same page, I think.
Oh, that's a close one.
Yeah. Floodgate starts this album. Floodgate 1 and Floodgate 2 ends this album. Was this ever one song and got split, or were they always two separate compositions?
As much as Brian Paxton, our bassist, would love for this to have been one song that got split, it is not. Two written at two totally different times. Always meant to bookend the album.
Gotcha. Uh, Pete wrote the lyrics for Memento Mori. Uh, what was on your mind? What were you writing about?
I was writing about something that my dad always used to say, and he passed about almost 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago. But he always used to say, "Nobody gets out alive," you know. So just talking about, if you're talking about death and you're talking about your own mortality. So I started thinking about that. I'm like, this is just a really catchy thing that he always said. That you know, it's kind of a flippant thing to say, but if you think about it, it's pretty deep. You can't live your life like you're like, oh, it'll take care of itself later. You gotta live like, what if this was the last day you had? How do you want to be remembered? Do you want to be able to, you know, stand there at the pearly gates or whatever you want to say and be like, okay, did I do all right? Or did you go out going, oh man, I was putting off being a good person till later, and then you run out of time. So, and also it's a Latin phrase, memento mori, which means it roughly means remember that you must die. And if you look at like old art of old saints illustrations or whatever, and they always have like a skull on their desk or a skull and a candle or whatever, and they're reading. You've seen a lot of those maybe if you look at old kind of art, and that's what that's for. That's the remembering your death. That's a reminder that you're going to die and to live a good life and do your best and you know yeah, I guess it's mostly about that. It's and I'm Catholic, and actually it's like I have this rosary that I wear that has the big beads are the little skulls. It's a memento mori rosary, and that got me thinking about that too, because I was like, I just think that's a good practice for people.
Yeah. Well, on that happy note, um, what I love about this song is there's an instrumental section near the end, right before the vocals come back in. That I think for me that's like the best minute and a half or so on the album. That crushes it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's heavy.
It is, but the soloing is excellent, and I mean that's kind of what prompted the question about solos. Like if I go see an ISD show, am I getting that solo?
Oh yeah, that's that. Yeah, and I practiced it again last night. Yeah, we're busting that solo out as you heard it on the album.
Yeah, that's one of those real majestic sounding sections that the solo that Tony did on that really brings that out.
The song "No One" sounds like the angriest song on the album.
So,
not a bad thing.
Yeah, no, it's I would say lyrically it's not really angry, more like just kind of
furious. No.
Furious.
Not so much angry as furious.
Just really, I mean, lyrically, no one gives a damn, which is actually Pete's line, no one gives a damn. And that's really just kind of sums it up. There's so many people out there that fancy themselves as talking heads, and everyone's got to share their opinion like it's going to change anything. And really, no one cares, and I'm not saying don't share your opinion, but at the same time, if like that's your whole personality, shut up.
Also, I think it's like because Tony and I have talked about it, and we usually whether lyrics or Tony writes lyrics, we usually will like discuss discuss it because we try to tweak them and make them fit the best the way they can. But one of the it's not so much that it's not as fatalistic as just nobody cares. What's it matter? It's not like
Yeah.
it's more like I used to think about like when I would post or I was going to comment on something online and I'd get to the end and be like, does anybody give a crap what I have to think? And then
Delete.
I would, and and it's we kind of we talk about that sometimes. Like some of these people that share every thought that comes to their head for the world to hear, like it's important. Sometimes it's you gotta check yourself.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because my dealings with Tony, like you're a funny guy. You seem, fairly soft spoken in terms of, where this sort of rage in the no one gives a damn line comes from is obviously it's performative for the song, but it's like, where's this guy lurking inside of Tony that is able to deliver that line like that?
Uh, well, I mean, he's always been there. You know, I love talking about myself in third person too. It makes me really comfortable. No, yeah, I mean, we all get upset, we all get angry or whatever. I just think when I started writing these lyrics, and they are pretty simple lyrics, it's pretty straightforward, I think, anyway. It was just pretty much just that, like, sometimes you're on Instagram and you just want to see cats, you just want to see golf stuff, music stuff, and you unfortunately, you're the people you follow are friends or whatever, and they just have to get on there and spout off about whatever, and thinking they're changing the world, and I'm just like, you know, no one cares. They never have and they never will, you know. So
Yeah.
that's all. It's not really like, true anger or whatever. It's just more along the lines of like, just shut up.
Yeah.
First, just please, for a second.
Yeah. Just I love the way you belt it out though. The no one gives a damn line is just
Thank you.
really
Yeah,
a lot of goes into that. And I always feel like that no one gives a damn vibe this time of year when everybody starts talking about their bracket because
Oh, yeah.
no one has ever cared about anyone else's bracket.
That's true.
there you go. It's a good analogy. Yeah, I will say that as far as what you just hit on a little bit with, I think this is probably Tony's best vocal performance that I think. I just really, or at least it's my favorite. Maybe I don't know, best is whatever, but it's the one I just love where he is in that range and how he's belting that out in that song. I think is really cool. And then
Thanks, bro.
came so close to not having a chorus. We were so
Oh,
like we had so much of that song that we loved, and we could not come up with a chorus that we didn't just all think is wow, it's terrible. And in the studio, we finally came up with something and some harmonies. We're like, I think that's it, and we put it down, and now we love it. So
yeah, it was literally like the 11th hour
oh,
when we
totally.
came up with that, because we were like, we got to be done with this thing. And yeah, it happened at the studio and it was awesome.
So the game is another one that Pete wrote the lyrics for, and you helped write some of the music for this one, I understand.
Yeah, that was I had the initial idea, the beginning keyboard part, and all of that, and the chorus. And then so I went over to Tony so we could kind of lay it down, and then he came up with that riff that's in between the verses and the chorus. Or yeah, I think that's how it is. But it just we were kind of just going back. It was one of those kind of magic moments where you're like, okay, I have this part, and they're like, okay, what if it does this then? And it's something totally different, but it fits so well. It goes right back into the chorus that I had. So yeah, I mean, I wrote. Yeah, I had the initial idea for that one, and that was a total collaboration on getting it to a song point and making it sound like ISD, and I had the idea for that the rhythmic part at the end that kind of goes off and goes crazy into an instrumental passage, but and that built too. I just had the rhythm idea, and then it just we built that together, and then the other guys and Pat and like, what if I did this? What if I did that? And it grew into a monster that I think we really got a unique song out of that.
It
And
was cool because I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna ask you, what is the game? What are we talking about? What's the game for you?
uh Well, Pete wrote those lyrics, so I'll let him answer. But I did want to add
Yeah.
that the way that song came together was one of those magical moments where when you're writing with someone else and it clicks and it happens kind of fast. That's what the game is musically, because yeah, like Pete came in with the keyboard idea. He had lyrics. There was lyrics written for the second half of that song that didn't have music yet, and I just did something real quick at home, sent it to him. I loved it. Came here, demoed out some vocal harmonies, and I just wanted to add that because it was a kind of a magical moment in writing that song.
Yeah, I'm really proud of how that one came out. Lyrically, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't like, sometimes I hesitate to tell people too much about this is where I was coming from because
Yeah.
if it's not obvious to you, or what did you get out of that? Because I'm just curious if it was what I was thinking or not.
Yeah, I never want to put any words in a musician's mouth in terms of, and I also don't want to look stupid by saying, oh, to me, it was about puppies. And it was,
Yeah, it was. It was about
Yeah,
puppies
my
playing
puppies.
games. No, I mean, in general, it's another one of the, it's just kind of a social commentary about people who, I get the feeling sometimes that there are people who, do you really believe what you're saying, or are you just trying to play some game with everybody?
Mm,
And sometimes you get frustrated by that. You don't, and you're like, I'm not playing this. I'm going to live in reality, and I'm not going to play your fantasy game and indulge your whatever kind of mental thing you have going on. I don't want to indulge. I don't want to indulge that. I'd like to help you with it, but I'm not going to indulge it.
yeah. Okay, fair enough. So one of the songs Tony wrote for the Tony solo album that never happened was the Light at the End of the Tunnel. And for me, this is like I've probably listened to this album a dozen times or so so far. So far,
Dang.
this is probably my favorite so far, and it's maybe partly because of the lyric content, because just the idea of how forlorn and awful it would be that you're in some place where you see the light at the end of the tunnel and then someone switches it off. That's just a devastating like concept.
Thank
And I'm
you.
sorry you went through something like
No,
that,
it's
Tony.
okay. It's okay. We suffer for our art. Obviously at the time it sucked, and I wrote that song once I was past that. And So it was I was able to kind of write it from a perspective of, okay, I'm looking back on it now. And yeah, it definitely felt like, yeah, the light got shut off. But like one of the other lines too is this, I'm gonna be the one that turns the switch on.
Mhm.
So and I feel like I've fulfilled that prophecy.
There you go. You
But
throw in a little
hey,
hope.
I'm glad that that's cool that you find that song to be a favorite. That's just one of those where I wrote it, and um it was pretty real. I mean, they're all real, obviously, but I mean, that one was, like I said, it was personal, and the guys accepted it, and we turned it into an ISD song, so it's
Mm.
awesome.
I think it's cool that you, because I didn't really think of it from that perspective, but it's cool that you're visualizing what would this be like if, I
Yeah.
think that's neat because I love when lyrics paint like a real mental picture for somebody or connect with them in a way it's pretty neat. I mean, I always looked at it as more like, I don't know, I guess I didn't think deeply about those lyrics. I was just like,
Yeah.
okay, this and that, and this is how this fits, and learning the song and coming up with a part and, stuff like that. So I don't always sit and digest it the way the listener would.
I think part of music for me has always been a vocal and lyrical thing. That's why I struggle with bands like Liquid Tension Experiment, even though the playing is fantastic and they're all virtuosos. Is that I think I connect more to songs through the vocals and especially the melodies. And Tony and I have talked about in the past the concept of extreme vocals or growls and things like that, and how I struggle with and rap struggle to connect with that music because I don't connect with it vocally and lyrically as much. So when I hear it, like, you think about a term or a phrase like the light at the end of the tunnel, that's something that we hear all the time. So,
Mhm.
it's, you want to call it cliche or common or whatever, but then to subvert that by saying that someone switched that light off is what makes it interesting to me.
Yeah,
Cool.
I,
Appreciate it.
I agree. I think that's cool. You take a phrase that's familiar to people and then put a little twist on it.
Yeah, that's there's an art to that,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I appreciated that. One thing I didn't ask about was Fine Center, and Tony had mentioned that Pat led the charge in extending the instrumental section. Um, what what did Pat do to sort of build that section?
Well, when he first heard the demo, that short instrumental section like really excited him. He was like, "I love that. I love that. I have these ideas. I want to do there's things I want to do." And I'm like, "All right, cool. We'll work it out. We'll work it out." And so we did. We started jamming on it. And kind of as a band, we took Pat's direction as we were kind of learning the demo, learning the song and then building on it. And so, yeah, what he wanted to do is he wanted to do some cool, like King's X style kind of accents, I guess would be a good way to put it.
Yeah, yeah. It's like taking King's X. We're all big fans of them too, or and the way that they can take a part that's just kind of and this is the I was thinking about it. It's instrumental passage. You think like going all over the place, and this is more like just kind of it's kind of a riff that we're jamming on, and you're just kind of tweaking it, and then you tweak it again
Just a
and
little
tweak it
every
again,
time. Yep.
and they're really good at gradually opening things up and just like okay, well here's the basic idea, and we'll just jam with it for a while. Then you'll open this spigot and change a little bit
Yeah.
here. You'll change it here, and you'll change it here until, and then you get the. And it's just it's interesting. It's not like oh it's this mind blowing
Yeah.
shred fest or something, but it's like it keeps your interest, and we all like music that keeps us interested. And even
We
though if
do.
it's a long jam, keeps your interest by changing and changing and changing. So, but yeah, a lot of that was Pat had these ideas, and he's like, what if we did this, and what if we did that? So we just
Yeah.
kind of stacked them together and tried to organize them in a way that was going to build.
Like he definitely wanted to kind of shred a little bit, so he does have a little bit of a solo in there. But like
Yeah,
it was his idea to to do like a halftime part, and I don't know if it was on purpose or if it was on accident, but when that happened, and Pete, you start throwing in those key changes on the keyboard,
yeah.
um, and so when I say that Pat led the charge on it, he he added interest to what was already a pretty sweet riff.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I'm not trying to diminish that it was a cool part that we all liked already, but
Yeah,
what can we slightly tweak with this? And
right.
yeah, that was a big fun thing I had this time with some of the keyboard things with it's just nothing crazy, but just change some voicings or change a chord just gradually. So it's like it changes the whole feel, even though it's pretty much the same thing. I love that kind of stuff. So it was
It's
fun to
like
try.
it's like one of my favorite parts on the album is when you're doing those was it is it choir or those
Yeah, it's like
choir
some choir
keys
choir and
at the
strings
end?
layered.
Yeah, at the end of the Fine Center when we're in halftime. Oh, it's so heavy, dude.
Floodgate 2 is the epic on the album, almost 14 minutes long. And I wanted to mention that just what a monster Pat is throughout this
Yeah,
entire album.
yeah.
But I feel like it on this song, especially, kind of shines through a bit. Was there, you said this was a different time that you wrote Floodgate 2 from Floodgate 1. Was there's like, did you take that as like, oh, we're going to bookend this album? Let's take some of the themes. And then once you have themes from the first version or Floodgate 1, how do you make a different song but keep that true to the first song?
Well, I knew that I wanted to bookend it right with Floodgate 1 and 2, and I actually really wanted it to be Floodgate 1, 2, and 3, and what is now known as 2 used to be 3 in my head way back in the day, and we would have 2, which would have been a shreddy instrumental, and then, um, but that didn't happen. But what did happen was when it came time to do Floodgate 2. This is another one of those that came kind of quickly, organically for me. Like that intro with the guitar, those lyrics came real fast. Like it it doesn't really happen to me that way very often. And so the way that Floodgate 1 comes back into 2, like I knew as I'm writing this song that like some of these riffs have to come back. And I kind of had an idea. I knew I wanted to do like a mellower version of the chorus from Floodgate 1 and have that in Floodgate 2. So I like knew in advance that I wanted to do it. And as I'm writing the song, I was just waiting for that time. Like, okay, I'm writing it. This part's cool. This part's cool. Here's the spot. That's how it kind of came together.
Okay. Um, Pete, where as the keyboard player in a metal band, how do you find where to play without sort of over like making it too busy? Like I know that that's got to be a fine line to walk for any metal band with keyboards.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I think I've just been doing it for a long enough time where I kind of just I guess everything to serve the song, right? So that's what I'm mostly interested in is what's going to make it the best song it can be. It's like not like, well, where can I show off or where can I do this or that? And
Right.
there's definitely times where like there should be a solo right here, and I want to do come up with a solo, and
Floodgate 2.
that's usually I kind of leave. What's that?
Floodgate 2. Your
Oh
solo.
yeah, my
Yeah.
Kevin Moore solo.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think I just a lot of times it comes from the demos where Tony will have some keyboard kind of ideas or at least a rough idea, or he'll be like, "This is where I think this part could kind of go," and then I come up with something for that. But I don't want to walk all over whatever the thrust of the song is. So I guess I'm just thinking I just gotta add. I'm trying to add atmosphere and I'm trying to add texture, and if I can add some cool texture to stuff, or every once in a while, there's like if something came out here and just showed, like I think on Light at the End of the Tunnel. That was one thing where I kept hearing in my head like this kind of sweeping, weird synthy sound.
And I freaking love that.
I like how it came out. Yeah, it was, but I kept hearing that. Like, but that's a spot where it's like something to stick in, but it's nothing too crazy. I guess mainly it's just I'm a real big fan of good songwriting.
Mhm.
So if there's a good song, I don't want to step all over it. So I guess it's just my intent is to try to just fit things in where they go. So in my head, I'm not. I can save my crazy stuff for the solo project.
Right.
There's a spot too. I think it's the weight. I'm pretty sure it's the weight where I wrote like a really simple little piano melody, and Pete turned it into a proper, piano playing part. So like there's parts there too where he's writing for the song, but it's considerably different than what I originally wrote, and
Yeah.
it's better.
Well, sometimes the song calls for a part. I guess I listen to them until I feel like this is what I want to hear here. And if it's that I want to hear this background texture that makes it sound more epic, or if it's like this would be a cool part to throw in, I just try to fit it in what seems like it would help the song
Yeah.
be the best it can be.
I was curious because I wondered how much tone, like how finished Tony's demos are. Like, if Tony writes a song, does he? It's like I think the keyboard goes here and maybe is in this key, and then you go, no, 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 that's not right. Or if he just puts something out there without it, and then you add that.
A lot of times he'll have stuff in there, and I'll either make it into like he was saying, make it into more of like a keyboard part. But he's really good at getting the feel for, like this kind of thing right here would be great if there was a choir, and he'll kind of put something like that in there. So usually but I mean, there have been times too where it's like he's like, I don't even know what to do here, but I do want like maybe there should be like a B3 organ in this part, but come up with
Yeah.
something, and then I'll do that. But a lot of times he has some keyboard parts in there that that at least get me right on track. And I know he does that with Pat too, where Pat will challenge himself to try to play some of the program fills
which I don't recommend.
because he's like, those are cool. It's not what I would come up with, but it's cool for the song. And I think Pat and I probably both do that, where we're like,
Yeah.
that was a cool idea. I don't think that's what I would have necessarily thought of, but I like how it fits. So you try to replicate it or replicate it as close as you can and throw your own flavor to it a little bit.
Mm, okay. So the album is called Floodgate, April 25th. The release date, I believe this is going to go live the Monday after you release, so it will already be out. But you guys will be on a short little Midwest tour to support this, and you're going to get out and get some live dates out of it. Any plans to record any of those shows?
No plans, but the idea came up. Yeah, for sure. I don't know if we will.
It's been a minute since your live album.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, that thing was recorded in 2015, so and released 2022, right before we put out the song Always Set. I don't know.
Right? Holy
yeah,
crap.
yeah.
I didn't realize that show was that old.
It's from the Fates Warning tour.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And Nick recorded it, got him at the token. But I don't know. I think if we were to record something live again, it would have to be probably mid tour or at the end of a tour, to where we are really crushing it. And I would love to do it though. I feel like we're really good live, and to capture that would be awesome.
But I will say, a big part of our live appeal is being there, because we love having a good time and interacting with the crowd, and you don't get that on a recording as much.
Yeah.
So
also interacting with each other too.
What's that?
Also interacting with each other too on stage.
Oh yeah, we have a lot of fun, and I think people seem to like that. But there's nothing that can replace the live experience when you want to go. I mean, live albums are great, but man, go be there and soak it in, and just be a part of the whole organic vibe of being there with. And that, that's one of the. No, I'd go on forever. We were talking forever, but it's one of the one thing that really clicked with me the first concert I ever went to was just being like, oh my gosh, I'm in the same room with this band.
Yeah.
We are in the same space. And I've never been able to get rid of that. That it's like,
that's so cool.
Not that some people are going to be wowed by being in the same room with us, but there's something that you get from that. Okay, we're all, even if I'm going to see like a symphony or something like that, and I'm like, well, they're playing this music right now. I'm not listening to a recording. They are performing this, and I'm hearing it, and we're all part of the same thing. And I think that's just something that I don't want to ever lose, and I would love for people to appreciate that more. And I think a lot of people do, but.
Well, I mean, it's good to see that you're humble, but I will tell you that every band is someone's favorite band. So if you just remember that, then it probably makes you feel a little better.
Oh yeah,
that's a good way to look at that.
Yeah. So for someone, being in the same room and the same space as Imminent Sonic Destruction is going to give them the feeling that you had at your first show.
That's very nice of you to say. I would love for that to be. I'm sure you're probably right.
It's just statistically, it's got to be true.
It's got to happen. It's got to be true.
It's a great mindset to have, though, when you're up there playing. It's a great mindset to have.
It is for sure. It is
to remember that.
Yeah, and that helps you. It helps you really focus in and give your best performance, because you're like, I could be really making a difference for one person in this place.
Like we could get to Milwaukee, and a place we've never played, and there could be 5 people there, but those 5 people, they're there for a reason, and so it might suck for us to only.
Oh wait.
But it might suck. It might suck for us to only play in front of 5 people, but you're gonna crush it for those 5 people, and then the next time you come back, those 5 people have already talked to all their pals, and you're gonna come back, and there will be 6.
You have melted their faces, and they are bringing a friend, literally one friend. All right. Well, for more information on Imminent Sonic Destruction, check them out on Facebook or their official website, imminentsonicdestruction.com. Is that where we're going?
That's the one.
And then, of course, you can buy their music on imminentsonicdestruction.bandcamp.com and do it on Bandcamp Friday, and they get a little bit more. Bandcamp doesn't take their cut on that day, so that will help you guys out. I hope it does really well for you. I think you guys are getting better and better with age, and hopefully, I see Brian's posts on Facebook. Hopefully he's not going to follow in the footsteps of Pat and do some damage to his hand? Like,
Uh, well,
Done that before.
he has actually. Our first album release show. What was it? 2 weeks before, Pete?
Yeah, maybe.
Nail gun, nail right through two fingers.
uh,
Like 2 weeks before the big show, and he ended up playing, but still, we
yeah.
had to get his brother like ready to play just in case.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
following his exploits with his. I was thinking about that when I remembered he had recently built a shed or something,
Yeah.
and I was like, you guys got to take it easy with the power tools, man.
Dude, you're not kidding. I'm an electrician Monday through Friday, and it's like all I think about is don't blow up your hands.
Imminent Sonic Destruction. Tony and Pete, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you telling me about this record. I hope Floodgate does really well for you, and hopefully you'll crush it in front of those five fans in Milwaukee.
Thank you. Appreciate it, brother.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for your time.